Somebody help! He's back!
What happened?
He's back! What happened?
My name is Miguel Santos. I'm from Davao, Philippines. I'm 41 years old. I've seen death. Not metaphorically, not in a dream. I mean it, I died. And what I saw, what I felt, what I became in that moment, I can't go back to who I was before. It happened without warning. I was working at a wind farm in Mindoro, way up in the mountains far from the city. I'd just finished a peanut butter sandwich in the cab of my bulldozer when I felt something press into my chest. At first, it was just pressure. Then it grew hot, sharp, terrifying. Within minutes, I was on the ground, unable to breathe, heart slamming like a hammer, and then nothing. Blackness. But this wasn't unconsciousness. It wasn't sleep. This was silence so deep, so total it felt alive. Like every sound in the world had been sucked away, so I could hear something far more important. I opened my eyes, and I was not in a hospital, not even on Earth. I was above it, floating in space, surrounded by stars. They didn't twinkle. They burned. Bold, intentional, like they were watching me. I looked around and realized I was inside a vast cavern, open, echoing holy. But where the floor should have been, there was only sky. Deep, endless night sky beneath me. I was suspended midair, yet I felt no fear. Just peace, stillness, recognition. Like I had returned to somewhere I'd been long ago. I realized then I had left my body, not lost it, left it, like a coat that no longer fit. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. I floated above glowing stone pathways that curved and twisted like veins of light. They weren't just beautiful, they were alive. I could feel them pulsing beneath me like they carried the memory of every soul who had passed this way before. I turned and saw a figure ahead standing in an arched doorway carved into the cavern wall. He wasn't just standing, he was glowing, radiant, a man made entirely of light, not shining, composed of it. I could see through him, but not beyond him. His presence filled the space. He didn't speak aloud, but my soul heard him clearly. Anak, you are home, but not forever. Not yet. His voice wasn't thunder. It was warmth. It was calm. It held no judgment, only love, the kind of love that silences every doubt you've ever had about your worth. I didn't want to leave. I didn't even want to ask questions. I only wanted to go to him, to disappear into that light, to stay. But as soon as I felt that desire in my heart, I was pulled away. Not yanked, gently drawn like a child being carried by a parent. Through stars, through silence, through something I can only call the veil between worlds. Then noise, chaos, hands pounding my chest, machines blaring, and the face of a woman, my medic above me, mouth open in disbelief. Her hands were still on my chest. My shirt was torn open. I could barely speak, but I whispered, "What happened?" She looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. "Miguel, your heart stopped. You died." I lay there drenched in sweat, too weak to move, but I knew deep in my spirit I hadn't imagined any of it. What I saw was real, more real than this world, and I didn't want to return, but I had. And now, I know why. I remember lying there after the medics revived me. The world felt too sharp, too loud, like my senses didn't belong to me anymore. They wheeled me onto an ambulance, but everything blurred. The pain in my arm was unbearable. My body was sweating, trembling, shutting down. I could hear someone say, "We have to fly him out. Too far by road." Someone else mentioned the helicopter. I whispered, "No way. I'll be paying for that thing for the rest of my life." They laughed nervously. I think I made that joke to distract them, because I already knew I wasn't going to stay. Moments later, I blacked out again, but this time it wasn't the same. I didn't float above myself. I didn't drift gently like before. This time, I was yanked out of my body like someone had grabbed my soul by the collar. In an instant, I was standing beside my own lifeless form, strapped to the ambulance stretcher. My face was pale, my lips slightly parted, my eyes shut tight like I had fallen asleep during a storm. But here's the thing. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel fear. I didn't even feel attached. Looking at my body was like seeing an old set of clothes I used to wear. Necessary once, but now irrelevant. I turned away, and just like that, everything changed. Suddenly, I was somewhere else. Not in space, not in a cave. It was peace itself. I stood before what looked like a vast open garden, but not like anything we have on Earth. Flowers were floating, literally hovering in the air, some the size of my hands, others as large as dinner tables. Their colors shifted and pulsed, deep blues that glowed like neon oceans, golden yellows that breathed light red so rich they seemed to hum with sound. Each flower was alive, not just alive aware, and somehow I knew they were watching me, not with eyes, but with attention, with presence. They weren't judging me, they were welcoming me. The garden was shaped like a perfect circle. Every flower had a place. Groups of different types, different colors, side by side, never overlapping, each one distinct, but connected. I didn't need to ask what it meant. The understanding came instantly. This was humanity. This was us. All races, all backgrounds, all faiths. Different, yes, but part of one circle, one divine pattern. The flowers seemed to say, "You're all part of the same design. You belong." And I remember thinking, why do we fight? Why do we kill over borders' skin names? From here, none of it made sense. The pain we cause each other. It's not just wrong. It's insane. As I stood there taking it all in, I could zoom in on any flower like my soul had a built-in lens. I focused on one with deep purple petals trimmed in silver, and in it, I saw my mother, her smile, her laugh, the way she used to hum while washing dishes. It wasn't her face, but her essence. I could feel it. The flower glowed brighter when I focused. It was her. I looked across the garden, and I saw more. My Lolo, my uncle, a childhood friend who died in a motorcycle crash at 17. They weren't just memories. They were here. And then everything shifted again. The sky above me opened. The colors faded into a soft, pulsing white. From it, 4 massive beams of light descended, aligned vertically, like pillars of heaven. They drew closer. Then suddenly, countless smaller lights burst into existence around me. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. They spun and swirled, each one radiating warmth. I didn't need introductions. They were my ancestors, my spiritual family, souls I'd known in lifetimes I couldn't remember, but somehow recognized. And then those little lights began moving. One by one, they shot upward toward the topmost beam, like arrows of energy, like sparks returning to a fire. As they entered the beam, something began to form. First, a head, then shoulders, arms, a chest. A full human figure made entirely of light. And when it was complete, it looked at me. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its gaze alone told me everything. This was not just some spiritual being. This was the source. This was power, truth, love, all wrapped into one. Miguel, you are known. You are seen. You are never alone. He began to move, slowly, gracefully gliding through the sky, like a being who had never once been bound by gravity. He circled me, never breaking eye contact. When he ascended, his gaze followed me upward. When he descended, his eyes remained locked on mine. His presence was so full, so overwhelming. I began to weep. Not out of fear, but out of release. Because in that moment, I understood I was fully loved. No conditions, no religion required, no performance, just love. Infinite, personal, undeniable. Then he shot into the sky, vanishing into trails of light, and with him went every trace of doubt I had ever carried in my heart. After he vanished, the sky held a sacred stillness, like the air itself was reverent. There was no sound, but it wasn't silence. It was presence. Every inch of space around me felt aware, as if the universe was pausing to let something holy unfold. I didn't know where I was, but I didn't question it. I didn't need to. My soul recognized it. This wasn't new to me. This was a return, a remembering. I was floating, yet I wasn't falling. There was no fear, no weight, no shame. Only that overwhelming sense of homecoming, like a lost son stepping across a threshold he thought he'd never find again. Suddenly, the sky shifted. What had been open and endless now folded inward, shaping itself into something like a cathedral made of light. There were no walls, no roof, no marble or stone, just beams of golden brilliance arching above me like heaven had been carved from sunlight. Below me, a radiant mist shimmered like morning dew lit by stars. And then they appeared. Dozens of beings, no wings, no halos. Just light, some faint and soft like candle flames, others bold and glowing like bonfires of compassion. They didn't walk. They simply were, and somehow I knew them. Not with my eyes, but with my soul. One carried the same calm presence my grandmother had whenever she prayed by the window during storms. Another shimmered with quiet strength, like my father, who used to fix our roof during typhoon season without a single complaint. These were not strangers. They were echoes, family, guides, fragments of love that had once touched my life and returned to show me who I really was. They didn't speak with voices. They communicated through memory, through emotion, through the deep stillness that says more than words ever could. Each one reminded me of a part of myself I had forgotten, a smile I had lost, a lesson I had buried. And I wept not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming realization that I had never been alone, not once. Even in my hardest years, working construction jobs in provinces I couldn't pronounce, sleeping in shipping containers, calling home on borrowed load, I was always accompanied. Then one soul stepped forward, brighter than the others, not intimidating, just more. He carried an energy that wrapped around me like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. You are not just one life, Miguel. You are many echoes of love woven through time. And in that moment, my spirit cracked open. All the things I thought I had wasted time, opportunities, relationships, they suddenly glowed with meaning. Every mistake I ever made had been a doorway. Every failure a chance to grow. My life wasn't random. It was deliberate. A story written with grace, even in the darkest chapters. One of the beings brought me forward toward what looked like a giant mirror, but it didn't reflect my face. It showed my choices. I saw myself losing my temper, ignoring people in need, holding on to pride. I also saw small kindnesses I'd forgotten, giving food to a child under the overpass, helping a stranger push a stalled tricycle, holding my brother's hand at our mother's funeral. There was no judgment in this place, no punishment, just understanding. The mirror didn't accuse me. It invited me to become more. The truth doesn't come to punish. It comes to free you. And it did. I felt lighter, clearer. I saw who I had been not as a failure, but as someone learning how to love clumsily, imperfectly, but always moving forward. Then I asked, not aloud, but with everything I was, why do we suffer? Why so much pain on earth? There was a pause. And then, like a breeze sweeping through every fiber of my being, I felt the answer. Pain is not the punishment. It is the breaking open. Through it, you remember each other. Through it, you become light. And I understood. Tragedy was not proof of abandonment. It was the raw material of compassion. When a child cries from hunger, it's not just a crisis, it's a summons. When a neighbor's home is swept away in a storm, it's not just news, it's a test for us. Everything painful was not the end, but an invitation, a chance to become more human, more divine. The cathedral began to dissolve. The souls drifted upward like fireflies, leaving trails of light behind them. I stood alone, full not with answers, but with peace. I felt no need to hold on to anything. Not even to stay. And then I felt it again, the gentle pull, the calling to return. Before I left, he came closer, not outside me, inside. I didn't see him, but I knew he was there, filling every corner of my being with love that had no conditions. You are the light now, Miguel. Go. Shine without shame. Then everything shattered into brightness, and I gasped. My body jolted. The defibrillator had shocked me. I opened my eyes. I was back in the helicopter. A medic leaned over me, crying and laughing at the same time. He's back. He's back. I could hear the rotor blades above us, feel the cold air on my chest. But my heart was quiet. My breath was steady. Because I had carried something back with me. Not a memory, not a vision, a truth. And it changed everything. I thought the journey had ended. I thought dying once was enough to shake me, enough to change how I saw everything. But I was wrong. The second time came fast too fast. They had just loaded me into the ICU in the hospital in Wichita. Doctors moved around me like a swarm of bees. One was prepping my chest. Another inserted something cold into my arm. Lights moved above me, blinding in flashes. I remember shivering. My fingers had turned numb, but I didn't care. My soul felt too far away. Then everything dropped. I didn't pass out. I detached. No struggle. No panic this time. One moment I was in my body, and the next I wasn't. I stood beside myself again, watching from the corner of the room. This time I wasn't surprised. I felt almost ready. My body looked small, heavy, like it belonged to someone else now. And then the walls dissolved. I wasn't in a hospital anymore. I was in light. Not the warm, golden kind. This was crystalline, cool, silver blue, like moonlight made solid. It shimmered all around me, endless and alive. I looked down and realized I was standing on nothing, and yet I didn't fall. Then I turned, and what I saw next stunned me into absolute stillness. Before me stretched a massive circular garden, but it wasn't like the one from before. This wasn't personal. This was universal. Each section of the circle glowed with a different hue. Rich, radiant color groups of red, gold, green, black, white, brown. I immediately knew these were the peoples of Earth. Nations, cultures, tribes. Each group distinct, breathtaking, vibrant in its own frequency. But they were all connected, interwoven root to root, like a cosmic tapestry woven by a hand, too ancient and too wise to comprehend. No section was above the other, no part superior. They were all equally essential, like pieces of one great body. I saw Filipinos, Chinese, Arabs, Africans, Europeans, Latinos, all shining with the same internal light. I could hear them not with my ears, but with my soul. Their stories flowed into me like water through cupped hands. Their joy, their grief, their dreams. Every people group had its own melody, but they sang in harmony. And then came a moment that crushed me with beauty. I saw myself reflected in all of them, not metaphorically, literally. I saw a child in Sudan smile the same smile I wore when I was 5. I saw a woman in Seoul bury her face in prayer the same way my grandmother had. A father in Brazil kissed his newborn with the same trembling awe I had when I first held my son. We were not strangers. We were reflections. And yet, I saw the violence. I saw the hatred. I saw war, racism, greed, religious superiority, national pride that devoured empathy. Flags waved as weapons, skin used as judgment. I felt it all, and it tore through me. And then, look closely, Miguel. Not all war is fought with bullets. Some is waged in the heart. I fell to my knees, if knees existed in that place, because I saw it clearly now. We weren't just hurting each other. We were hurting ourselves. The lie was separation. The illusion was otherness. But the truth, we are one soul wearing many faces. Then something shifted. The garden began to glow. The lights swirled upward, forming a dome of color and sound. It looked like stained glass brought to life, vibrating with divine energy. Every race, every tribe, every language now moving together. It was as if God himself had gathered the fragments of humanity and said, "Look what I created. Look how beautiful you are when you are one. You were never meant to conquer each other. You were meant to complete each other." I wept, the kind of weeping that empties you completely, tears that fall not just from the eyes, but from the spirit. I saw my mistakes, my silent prejudices, the times I had turned my back on people because they didn't look like me, think like me, believe like me. I had judged, I had othered. But now I saw clearly we all bleed the same light. Then Jesus came closer, not towering, not dramatic, just present, radiating that same steady love that had followed me across dimensions. And he spoke again, not to my ears, but directly into my spirit. You are not just Miguel. You are the hands, the eyes, the breath of every soul you've ever touched. You carry them in your choices. I asked, why show me this? Why again? And he answered, because you are listening now, and because the world is forgetting. Show them. Remind them. Love is not a feeling. It is a responsibility. And then the colors dimmed. The circle faded. The voices fell silent like a choir ending its final note. I felt the pull again. But this time I didn't resist. I didn't grieve. I understood. I was going back, not because I had to, but because I had something to bring. And then, lightning in my chest. A sharp jolt. A scream. Machines around me flashing. A nurse shouting, "He's back." I opened my eyes, and I was in the ICU again, shivering, eyes blurry, but different, changed. Because now, I didn't just believe in love. I had seen it, and I had become it. I woke up with a tube in my arm and a fire in my chest. My body felt like a battlefield, aching, stiff, fragile. Machines surrounded me, blinking and humming like confused witnesses. I could hear nurses talking softly nearby, one of them saying, "I still don't know how he's alive." I blinked, turned my head slightly, and saw a doctor standing by the window, scribbling notes with a look of disbelief on his face. When he noticed I was awake, he stared at me for a few seconds too long, then walked over. "You're not supposed to be talking," he said. "I'm not," I whispered, smiling faintly. He blinked. "You just had a massive heart attack, a widowmaker. Most people don't survive it, And even if they do, they don't sit up in bed like this 24 hours later. You're either incredibly lucky or—" He trailed off. I nodded gently. I know what I am, because I remembered everything. The light, the garden, the voices, the vision of humanity's unity. Jesus looking at me not with fire or fury, but with eyes full of knowing. I hadn't returned just to recover. I had returned for a reason. But I didn't talk about it right away. Not to the doctors. Not to my friends who came and stared at me like I was a ghost. Not even to my sister who flew in from Davao and sat beside me every night praying under her breath. Because how do you explain the unexplainable? How do you tell people you met God without sounding insane? So I waited. I healed. I watched. And slowly, I began to notice something. I couldn't see people the same way anymore. Where I used to see faces, I now saw layers soul beneath skin pain, behind smiles, fear behind bravado. I would look into a stranger's eyes and feel their childhood grief like it was my own. I could walk into a crowded hospital hallway and sense which patients were silently begging God not to die alone. It was overwhelming at first, like seeing too much, feeling too much, but Jesus had warned me. To see with love is to carry what others hide. So I carried it, and as I did, something else began to change. My thoughts, my priorities, my dreams. The man I used to be, the one who worked nonstop, chased overtime pay, and lived for Friday nights, was gone. He died on that mountain. In his place was someone softer, slower, but infinitely more awake. I no longer cared about the things that once consumed me. I didn't care if I never got promoted. I didn't care if I lost followers, money, or the approval of people who didn't even know my story. All I cared about was what I was sent back to do. And slowly that purpose began to reveal itself. One night, while sitting alone in my hospital bed, I took out a notebook and started writing. Not to publish, not to impress, just to remember. Every detail, every word Jesus said, every image that had been branded into my soul. The circle of unity, the flowers with no eyes that still saw me, the light that spoke without sound. I wrote it all down, and I wept through every page, not from sadness, but from something deeper release, like I was pouring out what could no longer stay locked inside. After that, I couldn't stop. I started reading about others who died and come back, near-death survivors, visions, dreams. I found people who said the exact same things I'd seen people from Brazil, Nigeria, Korea, even a fisherman from Cebu. We didn't know each other, didn't speak the same language, but our stories matched, word for word. Everything is about love. We are one. The soul remembers. It was like finding a family I didn't know I had. And I knew then I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. I had been chosen to witness, not to convince, not to argue, but to shine. So I started small. A conversation with my nurse about grace. A note I slipped to a stranger in the waiting room telling him he mattered. I started calling people I hadn't spoken to in years, asking forgiveness, offering peace. I gave away things I once clung to, my old tools, my expensive watch, even my truck. And the more I let go, the more I felt alive. I wasn't here to rebuild what I had before. I was here to build something new. Let your life become the proof of what you've seen. So I did. I told my story. Quietly at first, then louder. I told it to pastors and atheists, to relatives who didn't believe in miracles, to strangers on long bus rides. Some laughed, some cried, some changed. But all of them heard, because truth doesn't need permission to work, and love, real love, doesn't need applause. I returned because someone needed to remember what we've forgotten. And maybe that someone is you. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. You probably think I'm here to talk about heaven, about angels, about what it feels like to float among stars and see colors you don't even have names for. But that's not why I came back. No, I came back with a warning. And I don't say that lightly. I say it as someone who stood before the truth and came back still trembling from it. I say it as someone who grew up terrified of God, afraid to step out of line, afraid to ask questions, afraid that if I didn't pray the right way, go to the right church, say the right words, I'd burn forever. That fear ruled my life. I obeyed because I didn't want to be punished, not because I knew love. I memorized Bible verses but never learned how to see people. I went to church every Sunday but looked down on people who didn't. I thought I was good. I thought I was safe. I thought I knew God. But the God I met was nothing like the one I had been taught to fear. I did not come to scare you into heaven. I came to lead you home through love. And that shattered me, because I realized how many of us are trapped in fear, not faith. How many of us use religion like a weapon? How many of us spend more time judging each other than loving each other? I know I did. I used to think Muslims were lost. I used to think gay people were wrong. I used to think anyone who didn't believe exactly like I did was on their way to hell. But guess what? I died 3 times, and not once did I see hell. What I saw was separation. Hell isn't a place beneath the ground. Hell is what we create here now every time we choose pride over empathy, division over unity, fear over love. I'm not saying there's no justice. I'm not saying there's no consequence. But I am saying this God doesn't look at our denominations. He looks at our hearts. In that place, I didn't see labels. I didn't see Baptist Catholics, atheists, born again, Iglesia, Muslims. I saw souls, pure, brilliant, burdened by the walls we've built between us. I did not die for a religion. I died for relationship. That hit me like lightning, because I realized we've confused the two. We defend doctrine but ignore the poor. We memorize verses but forget how to be kind. We preach salvation but judge the addict, the broken, the ones society casts aside. And yet those are the very people Jesus sat with. Not kings, not priests, not the perfectly behaved. He sat with the rejected, the ashamed, the forgotten, the ones like me, like you. When I was floating in that realm surrounded by light, I wasn't asked how often I prayed. I wasn't asked what church I went to. I was asked, how did you love? Did I forgive when it hurt? Did I listen when someone needed to be heard? Did I defend those who had no voice? That was the real test, not how holy I looked, but how human I allowed myself to be. I say this now as clearly as I can. If your faith makes you hate, it is not from God. If your beliefs make you blind to the suffering of others, it is not holiness. It is pride dressed up as righteousness. And we need to repent not from sins of the flesh, but from sins of the heart, arrogance, division, indifference. The world is drowning in noise, in war, in political anger, in outrage disguised as moral clarity. And in the middle of all that, people are silently crying out, "Do I matter? Am I still loved? Is God real?" Yes, yes, you matter. Yes, you are still loved. Yes, God is more real than anything you've ever touched. But He is not where we expect Him to be. He's not hiding in temples built with gold. He's not confined to the pages of a book. He's not standing with the ones who scream the loudest. He's in the whisper of the hungry, the silence of the rejected, the brokenness of the ashamed. He's in you, and in the very person you were taught to condemn. When you judge someone, you do not see them. And if you do not see them, you do not see me. So let me be blunt. I am not asking you to believe in me. I am not asking you to agree with everything I say. But I am begging you, let go of the fear. Let go of the need to be right. Let go of the hate passed down to you in the name of holiness. And return. Return to love, to grace, to the truth that we are all of us, part of the same light. I return to this world not just to live, but to tell you this. God is not angry with you. He misses you. I'm still here. I breathe. I walk. I eat rice and drink coffee just like I used to. But inside, I am not the same man. I have walked beyond the veil. I have stood in the place where time doesn't move, where love has no limits, and where truth is not debated but known. I saw God not as a shadow or fire or cloud, but as presence, as a voice I can still hear in the quiet moments, whispering with more power than thunder ever could. You are not waiting to be saved. You were sent here to shine. And now I understand why I returned. Not to impress you, not to convert you, but to remind you. Because this world, it's losing something. We're distracted, addicted, divided. We scroll past suffering. We cancel people instead of healing them. We confuse loud opinions with truth. We worship performance instead of presence. I see teenagers who've never heard silence, mothers too tired to pray, fathers too ashamed to cry, children trying to be perfect just to be seen, elderly who feel invisible, and believers who've forgotten what they believe in. And I want to scream, wake up, because this life you're living, it matters. Every word you speak, every hand you hold, every moment you choose kindness over anger, it echoes in eternity. The other side isn't just some future place after death. It's watching us now, cheering, guiding, hoping we remember what we came here to do. You are not here to survive the world. You are here to transform it. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked a stranger in the eye and smiled without needing a reason? When was the last time you forgave someone without waiting for them to say sorry? When was the last time you were fully present with the person you loved, without your phone, without distraction? Just your heart wide open. These aren't small things. These are eternal acts. In that realm, I didn't get rewarded for being good. I didn't get praised for never smoking or quoting scripture or attending church on time. What mattered was love. Pure, ordinary, sometimes messy, real love. The kind you show when nobody's watching. The kind that doesn't get posted. The kind that hurts a little because it asks something of you. Love is not what you feel. It is what you do even when it costs. I came back to tell you this. You are more powerful than you know. Not because of your title, your money, or your status, but because you carry within you a light this world desperately needs. That light is your forgiveness, your gentleness, your willingness to listen, your courage to stand with the broken, your ability to see people not as problems but as souls. Souls just like yours, afraid, flawed, and so loved. I know some of you feel forgotten, that no one sees you, that your life doesn't matter, that you've messed up too many times to ever be whole again. But hear me, there is no distance too far for my love to reach. I was dead. I mean it, clinically, spiritually, emotionally, and he found me. He held me, and he sent me back for you. So if you're listening to this right now, this is not an accident. This is your invitation to come back to love, to come back to truth, to come back to yourself. You are here for a reason, and your life is not small. I was just a mechanic from Davao, a man who worked with his hands, carried silent trauma, and thought God was a distant ruler with rules I could never follow. But he shattered all of that. He met me in the stars. He showed me the circle of souls. He told me I belonged. And so do you. So I leave you with this. Live awake. Love boldly. Forgive quickly. Speak gently. And never forget you are not your mistakes. You are not your shame. You are not what others have done to you. You are light. Now go and remind the world what love looks like. If this story stirred something in you, maybe a memory, maybe a longing, maybe even a question you've been afraid to ask, then I want you to know, you're not alone. I didn't share all of this to go viral. I shared it because what I saw wasn't meant to stay with me. The light I touched, the love I felt, the truth I was shown, it belongs to all of us. I was just one man working in the mountains of Mindoro thinking my life was ordinary. But now I see there is no such thing as an ordinary soul. Your life matters. Your love matters. Even your pain, it's not wasted. It's part of something bigger than any of us can see from here. So if you believe that too, if you believe the world needs more compassion, more truth, more people who aren't afraid to love out loud, then I invite you to walk with me. Leave a comment. Tell me what part of this story spoke to you. Tell me if you've seen the light too, or if you're still searching. I'm listening. I read every word. Hit the like button if you believe love is still the most powerful force in the universe. Subscribe if you're ready to hear more stories, real stories of people who died and came back with a mission. Because this isn't the end. This is just the beginning of a conversation we all need to have. A conversation about what it really means to live, to forgive, to come home. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me share my heart with yours. Until next time, keep your soul open, keep your light strong, and never forget, you are deeply, eternally loved.